I kind of touched on my story earlier. My family was not supportive. It was horrible. Nobody thought I was making a good decision whatsoever. And then time has borne out that it was a very good decision. And my grandmother, who was the most vocal, is madly in love with my now husband. And if I try to reference how she thought that the divorce was a mistake, it never happened. She never thought it was a mistake. She always knew that's what would be best for me. So it's one of those things that even if it goes horribly, it's time. Time will bear it all out, and holding that vision, like so many have spoken to, is really the most powerful thing that you can do, and not meeting their resistance with your resistance. It's like when they're showing you that they don't like what you're doing and you come back strong with that, it's just going to be such a push pull. I tried to always just, you are so right to have your point of view. I know your point of view is coming from love, and that can be really hard. I have a situation right now. I have a transgender daughter, and my father has disowned our family because we support her. And, it's been a year and a half that my father has completely disowned our family, and I won't let anyone in my family badmouth him about it. He thinks he's coming from a place of love. That's crazy for me to imagine. But the more that we can, share that with the people around us and our kids, that like everyone's just doing what they have, that they're dealing with from their own experiences and beliefs that have created their filter that they view the world through. And I think that goes a long way. I'm hoping that by not resisting that situation, that it will, come to a happier conclusion at some point.
Sabrina, we can't hear you.
Anyone else want to respond to Marianne? Yes, no?
Yes. So how did everyone break the news to family? I don't remember it being like one conversation. I feel like similar to Tori. Well, maybe Tori wasn't telling her family, but like when it started to sort of unravel, like I immediately called my mom. So my mom is the person to go to, and then she tells my dad. It's a little bit opposite. But I spoke to my mom, and then actually both our parents got on the phone and we had a conversation about it. So it was anticlimactic in that way, that it was, was a huge reaction, but it was like, we're here for you. Let's get through. We're going to get through it together. So that was my experience.
I don't really remember telling my parents. By that point, they were divorced or separated. But the memory that I have, or the feeling that I have, was that everyone was kind of like, oh, wow, okay. We were wondering when that was going to happen. And then I had similar experiences to Leanne, in that like things started to come out about stuff that had happened over the years that they hadn't shared with me. And so I had the same reaction, like, why didn't you tell me? But if I'm being honest, I think I would have just been really defensive, and I would not have listened to anything that they would have said, because I think a big part of the person that I chose to marry was like, I never went through a rebellion in adolescence, and so I decided to do it in my marriage. Not a good plan for anyone considering it. Not a good plan. So yeah.
Totally hear you on that one. Anybody else want to respond to Marianne?
Oh, go ahead.
Mine, the first divorce, my parents were already divorced, and my dad took his side and like felt like sympathy for him and everything. And I remember that was really hurtful, because it was like, you're my dad, you're supposed to support me no matter what. And so, but I had my mom, who we were super close, and when I could talk to my mom about anything, so she was my rock. And the second divorce, both my parents had passed away, so I was totally on my own. But I had my sister and my brother and like my best friend. So I remember it was really hard to come out, because it was a second marriage. I had a lot of shame, and I didn't want to go through divorce again. I did not want to admit that I had made a mistake a second time, and I didn't want to admit the situation that I was in. So So there was a lot of image. So it came as a shock to everybody when the truth came out, and I took that stand and told them. And then the support, and the same thing is like, they were all had stories and like, we knew this and we saw this, and there was that feeling like, well, why didn't you tell me? Like maybe I would have not wasted so many years, you know, like if I had seen some of the things and knew how you felt. But then again, there's also that defensive, you know, like my life is perfect and I don't want anybody else to see otherwise. So for so long, but the support, like when you do take that risk and tell everybody and you get the support, you don't really know what's coming.
Totally.
Yeah.
100%. Marie, do you have anything else? Are you good?
I also, my son came out as trans as well, like right before the divorce. And so that made my father even more angry. He refuses even now to call him by his name, or even recognize that he is trans. So yeah, it's just been a really rough ride with that. And I told my mom first, and she insisted that I tell my father in person, face to face, and that was really not a great idea.
I hear you.
If I had to do it over again, I never would have told him.
Oh,
Wow. Yeah.
but what kind of message would that have sent to your child? I mean, you want to just be supportive of your child 100%.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. We have another question. Does anyone want to read it?
Has anyone ever read the book Mom's House, Dad's House? Best book I've ever read. It relates to how to navigate divorce with kids. I'm actually familiar with that, and I actually coach a lot of people on co-parenting. So I think it's great. I think that, you know, having the mindset that, you know, creating however you want things to be at your place, communicating that with the ex, even if it's tough, it's really for the children. It's for making sure that their transition, they didn't choose divorce. You know, how are we creating safe, loving environments in each place that can, you know, coexist, and so they feel security, they feel love in both places, even if mom and dad aren't getting along. That's really important.
100%. 100%. All right, we're moving on to Tori.
So my name is Tori Brame. I live in Charleston, South Carolina. So a little bit of my background. The reason I went through a divorce was because I got diagnosed with lupus nephritis, or well, SLE, which is just the normal lupus, and then also lupus nephritis. And my ex-husband couldn't handle it. So, you know, there was a lot of emotional abuse during the time that I was bedridden. And then after we had my son, it was clear that he wanted nothing to do with me. And so after I made the decision that enough was enough, and I was tired of this back and forth of like, oh, we're getting divorced and we're not, we're getting divorced and we're not. And I was just like, okay, if like I have to leave if he doesn't leave. And I kind of put my foot down, and it was this line in the sand, and you know, of like, this is how I expect to be treated, and if that doesn't happen, this is what it's going to look like for us. And so my question, so when that happened, I got better. I went into remission. And so my question for you guys is, how was your health being in a bad relationship, and how did it change after you got out?
Wow.
I would say my health was always decent, but I was kind of a hypochondriac. I didn't deal with pain very well. I didn't see again, it goes back to that. I didn't see myself as being a strong person. And then when I went through my divorce, I think I started tapping, my anxiety levels went way down because I was able to manage it. And since my whole perception of myself shifted, and so that impacted my health. And so the two things that happened like post divorce was one of my children went through a 2-year illness, and I didn't know if she was going to come out of it. And I was diagnosed with breast cancer at the same time. And if you had told me like 4 years before that I would have been able to handle those things by myself, I would have told you there was no way that was going to happen. And I handled both of them. And Marianne, yeah. And I was with the breast cancer, it was in the middle of my daughter's illness. And so I had no choice but I was just like, I don't have time for this right now. I have to be there for my child. And so it brought me to like radical acceptance right away, and not right away, but way more quickly than I would have gotten on my own. And so I just said, okay, I've been diagnosed with this. I need to know what my options are so that I can make my decisions, so that I can move forward. And so that's what I did. And I got through, and I was very fortunate. I found it myself. So do your exams every month. It was early, and I didn't need chemo, and I didn't need radiation, which thank God, because I really didn't know what I was going to do if I needed that. But so me, the hypochondriac who didn't deal with pain well, I went through I had a double mastectomy, and I didn't take one painkiller. And not because I'm so amazing at pain, I didn't have any pain. And some of that was because of my surgeon. And I know that some of it was me. And I did all of my, thank you, Marianne. I did all of my mindfulness stuff. And I was like in that place that I was ready to deal with it. And it absolutely impacted my recovery. The nurses couldn't believe the next day that I had just had the surgery, because I'm not going to say fine, and it's not something I'd wish on anyone. I would never want to go through it again. It sucked, but I got through it. And it would have been a very different situation 4 years earlier if I was in my marriage when I was dealing with all of that.
Oh, I love that. And I'm sure your like perspective on your own body was so much better when you went through that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I did before I had my surgery, I went through a whole kind of gratitude thing for my body and how I had brought 2 lives into the world, and I had fed them, and I had, it was strong, and it was going to get me through. And this very like woo-woo thing that I probably, but absolutely 100% believe that it helped me, because again, going back to thoughts and what we manifest and your energy. Yeah, absolutely. And I wouldn't have been in the place to do that, 4 years before, when I was in an unhappy marriage. So it completely, and I've had a couple of other experiences too that have been really challenging, but I've bounced back, either physically or emotionally much quicker than I would have before. So yes, my health is absolutely much better now.
That's amazing.
Marie?
I definitely have a similar story. I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia after probably 10 years of being in chronic pain, to the point almost that I was bedridden. I didn't feel like getting out of bed. It hurt to get out of bed. It hurt to walk around. It hurt all the time. And it was just like a dull pain. It wasn't really necessarily even something excruciating, but it was enough that it was depressing. And I was so depressed, and I had such bad anxiety. And it was really because I was unhappy where I was, the environment that I was in. And once I got out of that environment, and once I started to change my mindset and started to really focus on energy and where I was putting it, one day I woke up and I wasn't in pain anymore. And I just, I still get chills like thinking about that day that I woke up and I was fine. and I could get out of bed and I could walk down the street and I was fine. And that's just
Wow.
That's amazing.
That's amazing.
That's amazing. Lisa, did you have something?
No, I was no.
Oh, okay. I'm
It's a
sorry.
personal story about that, but I concur completely that it's all energetic. And once we clear the energy, everything out there, including our health, starts in here. You clean up the interior landscape, you clean up the exterior.
yes.
I didn't have a physical ailment, but I recognized that my nervous system was so taxed. I physically, was a very fit, great in health that way, but my emotional health I was worried. I didn't really have anxiety, debilitating anxiety, but I didn't know that I had anxiety around, dealing with my ex-husband on a daily basis, who was a lot to handle emotionally. And I lived more in a fight or flight from a nervous system perspective. He also lived that way. So it was sort of like by osmosis, like that's just where I would be. And so when I started going through that, it was I felt, and it was definitely energetic, but I felt like this, like calm come over me. I remember it being one day where I would wake up and I would feel great. Not that and I was like, wow, I didn't realize I ever felt bad, or just the anticipation of what that day was going to be like. And again, it wasn't terrible, but it was just, there was that level of anxiety, or just, I didn't know what to expect on a daily basis. And then when I was just me waking up on my own, it was much easier. I still didn't know what to expect from him, coming from, going through the divorce, but it wasn't physically in my space. I could control that. And so I think that's been the difference too, is that I'm much more, I very much lean into, meditation and mindfulness and listening to my body. I don't work out the same way. I'm much more gentler to my body. I'm not as intense with it. And I feel better. So
I love that. Charmin?
I agree with Leanne. I didn't have any like a physical issue or anything in the marriage, and I didn't realize it was more mental and emotional and this heaviness, and I didn't realize like the depression and stuff until after I was out a ways and I was on my own. And then people would tell me all the time, like, you just have this glow about you, or did you lose weight? And 20 pounds melted off of me without any effort, just being free. And so it does affect your health, even if you think you're healthy or whatever. It's affecting you physically, everywhere. And it was amazing to wake up and just be happy in that calmness and control of your environment.
yes,
Huge. And the kids noticed. My kids, are so supportive. It took time for them to see, the difference between then and now. And they're just, I feel like they got to see it too. And it was helpful for them.
That's
100%.